Hello and welcome everybody. So normally I just stream, I just go ahead and get games on, or I talk about things analytically, but with me today is somebody who, if you don't like what I have to say, because I am now officially a 1600 ranked, 1600 MMR shitter, here's someone who is by definition not shit. He's in fact the antithesis of it. 6-time tank winner, Artosis Supercup, second place finisher, and peaking at number 2 on the ladder, and currently sitting at number 7. It is the Infernals player TheoRy. TheoRy, how are you doing? Was that the introduction you hoped for?
Wow, that was more than what I expected. That was a great introduction, man. Thank you.
I've
Yeah,
done
I'm
this a
doing
couple
great.
times. Yeah, it's good to hear, man. How have you found, just generally, how have you found the beta being? How have you found the beta? You gotten a lot of friends in, or have you seeing a lot of new names? We jumped from something like 1,100 people on Stormgate World to I think we're over 11,000 at this
Wow.
point, and you're still number 7. So you're like super grandmaster level in a game
Cool.
that has yet to have grandmaster.
Awesome. Yeah, I've had a really great time. Honestly, Stormgate is way surpassed my expectations. It's a really great RTS game. You guys all have the footage of it now. You've seen on YouTube all the show matches, casting. You can play the game. It looks very good for a beta, um, and it feels incredible. Even not just for a beta, but the engine itself is the best engine I've ever felt for a video game. And what I mean by that is I live in West Coast, I'm playing in European tournaments, I'm playing with my practice partners in Korea. I feel zero lag, zero latency. The what Frostgiant has done with their engine and the back end of this game is truly incredible and impressive.
You know, I was going to start somewhere else, but actually I want to piggyback on that. So, did you know there was a Reddit post that went out earlier today where someone was playing from South Africa over to North America, and they said that they have 200 ping, and they just didn't know what that was like. They didn't know it was possible to play a game that ran that smoothly.
That's
That
awesome.
that's incredible, isn't it? It's just the most wild shit I've ever heard of. I will say, there was a lot of negative speculation, especially from
Oh,
the
for sure.
outside, right,
Of
from the
course.
public Discord. You know, public Discord, Twitter, Reddit, the place where all of the people who are sitting in the chair and have the megala mind just like looming back over their chair live. I can't blame them. I live there as well. And there was a lot of concern about how does the game look to play? How does the game feel to play? I will say, in terms of just playing the game, I find that, and we'll start with this, I find that actually the inclusion of creeps gives this not only for me as on an analytical standpoint more to think about in the game. I think it drastically changes the game. I think that people's perspective of, well, it's StarCraft 2, but it has some creeps for some reason. Listen, I'm not talking about my 1600 games. From analyzing the games that we've seen on streams like Uthermal, you yourself have streamed from the high level games that we've seen from tournaments and from Elephant and Devastator events. It just looks like it completely changes the entire face of the game. What do you think about creeps? Are they just an add on so you can get 40 Luminite, or what does it do for you?
Definitely. So it definitely changes the game in the fact that um, it forces activity on the map. You can't turtle successfully in Stormgate. You have to take these objectives in order to be competitive. Especially for a race like Infernals, creeps not only give money, but they give animus, and they take away from the fact the opponent now can't get those creeps, and you get fiends.
They can
That's
also
probably the
be
biggest part.
they can also be infested. We see things that you can take like health regeneration, and you can obviously capture vision towers and things of that nature. I think that this is going to change a lot of people's minds on how to play this game, because I've said this before. Well, I'll lean into it. You can take as much of it or as little of it as you want. For StarCraft 2, I feel like my low level was not analyzing that game as hard as I could level. My thoughts on that were, you wanted to have enough forces to be safe from your opponent's aggression, or enough to overwhelm them, and any level in between is just kind of nothing. Like, if you committed to, let's say, like the Stormgate equivalent would be if you were to do a double dogs rush on your Vanguard opponent. For some reason, you thought that was a good idea. If we were in StarCraft 2 and there were no creeps, as soon as that gets defended, you just have a bunch of suboptimal units. And now you have something that you can focus on. Do you think we're going to see more I'd talk about it like a wave, as if you capture something and now your opponent has army and they capture more. Do you think we're going to see more of that as the beta advances?
Yeah. So like you said, in StarCraft, there's no creeps on the map. There's no map objectives really besides bases. You're fighting over bases. And the only thing that I guess rewards you for taking bases is the fact your bases mine out. So um, in this game, there's a little bit more incentive to be on the map. And I think it's going to shift back and forth depending on how they change things and balance how key they are. But as you've seen on Elephant, they're extremely key. Whoever gets the most creeps has a significant advantage in terms of money infestation, etc. So at the high level, I see players splitting the map. I see strategies regarding trying to kill a player as they're in the middle of creeping. Almost all early game engagements revolve around creeping. It's such a key aspect of the game, especially on Broken Crown Hinterlands.
I'm glad that we're doing Broken Crown Hinterlands. Let me put a nail in that because we'll come back to it for the tournament conversation. But something about creeping also that I don't think people. I don't think that they're. It's not that they're wrong or that they're naive. I don't think they're thinking laterally enough. So one of the complaints that has been had for other games, fill in the void of what other games those might be, right? Is that typically part of the challenge of RTS is that they've made the macro mechanics hard or repetitive. Now, I think that creeps just offload the macro mechanics as a direct function of who's winning the game. So instead of having something like in Tooth and Tail building farms, or instead of having something like I guess you would say something like injects or something like mule call downs. Instead of those things happening in your base, they're now happening out on the map. And so, do you think we'll ever get to the point where creeps are part of a build order? As in, against this build, you know you should have this creep and you need that therium or this buff, etc.?
Yeah, in fact, I think we're already at that stage. Um, so in the beginning of Elephant Phase on Broken Crown Hinterlands, we'll go after the first patch. There's a patch. So
Yes, yes.
the
The
version of the game
Hornets,
you've
right?
seen,
Yeah.
yeah, and the creep camps were changed.
Okay.
So there's less creeps at every camp. But so the middle camp, everyone's fighting over those two 50 gold squid things in the middle, right? That's the meta. So players like me and Parting and Albino, we took a different approach. We break the trees, and I'm a huge fan of breaking trees, as you've probably seen in a lot of my
Yes.
games.
From the
And a
Super
lot of
Cup,
people were,
right? Yes.
yeah, a lot of people were very critical because like, why isn't he mining? Why is he breaking trees? Like, isn't that a waste of time? And now everybody does it. It's the
Yes.
meta. So I've defined the meta of breaking trees. So I break the trees to take over the left side of the map, or sorry, not left side, but my safe side of the map
Yeah, that
because
triangle, right? Yeah.
yeah, the
For anyone who
triangle.
doesn't know.
It has a lot more resources and better buffs in the current meta. So now that Gaunts have Infest again, I want to go for the camps with the most units. So we broke the meta, and a lot of people are aware and are blaming us now, like, oh no, ladder's cancer. So our build order revolves around breaking down the trees, infesting the speed camp to get 5 Gaunts, or
Yes.
sorry, 5 fiends, and then just
Yes.
brutalizing the map with speed fiends. Like that's the meta right now.
Yes.
So it's already defined into the build orders, and I did it I did it every single game in the tanks, both tanks NA and EU over the weekend.
Yeah. For
And no one
Elephant
else
Patch, for
was,
anyone who doesn't
yeah.
know. Right.
And in the EU tournament, nobody was doing it until the finals. After I did it a bunch of times and people were talking about it, then everyone, like in the finals, we were both doing it. And then by the time the NA Cup started, 4 hours later, every single person was doing it.
I actually mentioned this, so we're going to come back to the tournament conversation because one of the, well, first off, Broken Crown Hinterlands, the map. Thankfully, we had this change for the Elite Gaming Channel Stormgate Open 10K, where instead of using Titan's Causeway, which is not used on the ladder, we'll all now be playing on Broken Crown's Hinterlands for Game 1, which will actually be the entire set for the first 2 rounds. If you didn't see the handbook, the round of 512, the round of 256, you have to pick the first map as Broken Crown Hinterlands. The reason that I want to bring this up is there are 16 people who can get to the second day or the final day, right, to the prize payout. 9 through 16 gets $200, up to I think $3,000. So the question I have is this: with the with the change for Broken Crown Hinterlands, do you think that we're going to see? No. I remember what it is. How fast do you think the metagame development will be? And the reason I bring this up, 12 of the 16 players are fine. 4 come through ladder, and 8 come through the 512-person qualifier. Not a problem. There are, however, 4. I think there's quite disadvantaged, actually, individuals who have to come out through Katowice. And the reason I think they're disadvantaged is they have to get in those 4 through a qualifier that happens the first day of the second weekend. So the metagame that they're playing on is 6 days hyper-accelerated by all of the tournament games that have been broadcasted live through a bunch of analyst videos. Do you think I'm going too hard on this? Do you think it's going to be easier or harder for them?
It's gonna be hard. I think not just meta. I don't think they play. I think they're focused on winning Katowice. They're still full-time StarCraft because I've ran into some of these players on the ladder that are in Katowice. But
Sure.
then I'll check how many games they've played. They've played like 3-4 games. And
Okay.
I don't. I think their focus is still StarCraft because their career depends on them doing well at Katowice. So
Oh, sure. No one's saying that they're doing the wrong thing by putting the focus there.
yeah.
But
So it'll definitely be hard. I think meta excited or not, I think they need to learn the hotkeys. I mean, I think they have a lot to learn. Just basics basically. And I could see like a pro StarCraft player, they're gonna like try to fast expand. Like I think you mentioned off stream, like StarCraft players gonna be like, I need to expand, defend, and play defensive. Where if they were Dota players or League players, Warcraft 3 players, maybe they'd be like, oh, I need to go creep. I need to get units now. 2 production structures to go creep, infest, get animus.
yes.
They're gonna have to shift their total. Their mindset's gonna have to shift away from a StarCraft mindset to more of a Stormgate mindset.
Let's get into that a little bit. So the short version for anyone who doesn't want a whole like 1 hour long diatribe on why this exists is that because creeps are, in my mind, offloaded macro mechanics, right, that are on the map as opposed to in your base, you have to go fight them to get resources, to get positioning. And then what that means is that if you don't have units, like if you're trying to fast expand, this is completely counter to the StarCraft style of, do I have enough units to kill you? That's the right number of units. Do I have enough units to survive you trying to kill me? Okay, between that upper and lower bound, I don't need any more or any less than that, right? So I think that we're just going to have, does this mean that we're going to have less expansions at a high level? Do you see like more casual games and say there's no way that the game expands that fast, or are the army sizes just bigger throughout and that's what they have to learn?
So Stormgate's very interesting because they're trying to make the game as skill based as possible, as fun as possible, and as dynamic as possible. And this is it seems like this is the only game they're working on. So they're doing a fantastic job putting all the best aspects of all RTS games and ideas into one game. And the reason I say that is because I see the entire map being taken. I see expansions everywhere. More expansions in StarCraft than in StarCraft. StarCraft, I feel like at the pro level, doesn't often get past 4 bases, except for like maybe TVZ. And in this game, I feel like at the top level, we're always getting 5, 6, maybe 7 bases before the game ends. And that's off of usually 1 base aggression to take creep camps. And I think a lot of it has to do with there's objectives on the map that are very healthy for your economy and keeping the game active and keeping the game exciting. But if someone takes an advantage, there's very powerful defensive mechanics to prevent you from dying immediately, like Bob Overcharge. The Hellspawn Resurgence, is that what it's called? The Control
Yes.
X ability for
Yes.
the Infernals, things like that. So there's really strong defensive mechanisms.
I think
Pro
the
macro
biggest
play.
I think the biggest defensive mechanism that other people I hear a lot of it talked about, but again, I hear it talked about in a very casual or layman level sense, which is the game is slow. Now what they mean is the battles don't violently immediately erupt in viscera and gore and guts everywhere. But I've played. There are other RTSs that aren't from the Blizzard style RTS where time to kill is lower. And in fact, there is a Blizzard title, Warcraft 3, by the way, for anyone who just forgot about it, where time to kill was very slow, and we would never denigrate the speed of those games or what becomes interesting. So, what do you think of the time to kill? Like, how does it make it more defensive? Do you feel like it adds a lot to the game? I mean, you're coming from a very high level of StarCraft 2. So, what would you say is the difference, and why do you think that contributes, if at all, to these longer game states?
Cool. Yeah. So I've played a ton of StarCraft 2 and Warcraft this year. So the games are both very fresh in my head.
Okay.
I probably played between beta phases of Stormgate. I would just grind Warcraft 3, and I played StarCraft competitively. So both are fresh in my mind. Both are totally opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to time to kill. Um, Stormgate is closer to the StarCraft 2 side, um, but it's still pretty far from the Warcraft 3 side. Warcraft 3, you could start a battle for 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but some of the things to point on. So time to kill in a battle in Stormgate doesn't erupt. Like in StarCraft, army explodes 15 seconds, probably 10 seconds, done. Battle's over. Everything exploded. In Stormgate, I watched a VOD of a very late game versus me versus Kevin yesterday. One, to find out why my dragon didn't spawn. It was due to a bug.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but two, I realized like the battle was like 95 seconds.
That's anathema to StarCraft 2 players. Like they won't be able to grasp that it could happen for 95 seconds and be an interesting back and forth fight, by the way. Like that it's not just watching hit point bars go down slowly like a Final Fantasy boss fight.
Yeah. And it wasn't because the fight was slow. It's because we're healing stuff. He has his little healing bunker. I'm eating my own fiends to eat stuff. We're constantly reinforcing. We're doing defensive spell casts. I pulled a Weaver back with another Weaver to save it. So the time to kill is slower, but it allows for an epic battle. The game isn't slow when it comes to an epic battle because of all the spells going on. You see Weaver stabs, stomping. The ground turns into creep. I mean, it's chaos. It's
Medtechs
very
have three
fast
separate
paced.
abilities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jump jets on
Um,
your Vulcans. Like almost everything. There don't seem to be that many dedicated spellcasters. The one that I can think of, the Medtech, it still has three abilities, but everything can upgrade to become more effective. I think
yeah.
that's what I like. Instead of seeing upgrades like, we do have the combat shield like ability for the Lancer of the kinetic redirection where it's just better because it does the thing. But a lot of these abilities are, you need to activate them and make use of them. And if you don't, then the low time to kill actually means things like positioning matter a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What do you, so you mentioned a super late game against Kiwian. For anyone who doesn't know, Kiwian, while playing Infernal here and there, is most powerful in terms of MMR on the Kiwian account for Vanguard. So you play Infernals. From my perspective, okay, Vanguard got hit with a buff stick the size of like a Jacob's ladder. It just like a ladder to the moon. Bam! Just hit with a giant buff. Is the state of Infernals dire? Was Infernals so overpowered before that it needed it? You're on the Infernal side, so I'll let you take control of the narrative here.
Yeah. Yeah, Infernals is definitely overpowered last phase, 100%. But I do think the Vanguards didn't use they didn't play the meta correctly, I feel,
Okay.
last phase. And the game is new, so you can't blame them, right? It's
Sure.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
fresh. Um, if you guys watched the Artosis show match and read the comments, all the footage shown from the last phase was basically the only Infernals that anyone got to see gameplay of was Mana, me, I guess Moon a little bit, and Parting.
Okay.
So when it came to versus Vanguard, you really only saw Mana, me, and Parting.
Okay.
And from a competitive standpoint, probably most people consider the Parting Mana game or Parting me games to be the state of balance, where I massed a shit ton of fiends and Parting rushed everyone.
Okay. But by the way, if you saw that, that's like the level 1 analysis because all the people that Parting rushed, first off, I could tell you right now what he did, right? He had 103, 1038, 215 Brute went across the map and asked you if you felt comfortable with fast expanding, or if you were doing a hedgehog build, he just turns around and eats the entire map because, he's trained his soul through years of StarCraft 2 and being a pro player. So is the implication of that just that it's not that Infernals were actually overpowered, it's that basically the Infernal players that people saw were overpowered? Come on, you get a chance to big yourself up here. How would you?
It was a bit of both last phase.
Oh, okay.
This phase, we'll
Okay.
go into this phase later. Well, I have a very different opinion. But
Got
last
you.
phase,
Yes.
it was a little overpowered. Brute beats a Lancer 1v1 almost. Last phase, 100 gold. Brute beats Lancer almost 1v1. And then once you split it, it absolutely destroys it 1v1.
Yes.
In fact, you could almost win a 1v2 probably. Uh, but
Okay.
so that has changed drastically. The Brute will get wrecked by a Lancer now.
Yes.
Um,
Brutes are
and
also
it's-
now half the man they used to be. They literally you get the two of them for the price and everything of three now.
Yeah, so that has changed drastically. A lot of it probably has to do with that show. It's funny because that show match, that wasn't the meta actually.
Okay, go
Those-
on. Hit me with it.
Yeah,
What
I want to go
what
with
was
that.
the meta and why was what you did good? Because for anyone who doesn't know, I'll just preamble you really quickly. So for the Artosis Supercup, which I imagine you're talking about, right, for the show matches, it was Mixu Azure, TheoRy here, and Parting. And basically, Parting, we'll talk about what he did later, but TheoRy, you just completely wrecked the people who went for hedgehogs, either by Shroudstone blocking them and cheesing their cheese or cheesing their tech, or making like 30 fiends and exploding and eating all the hedgehogs on Secluded Grove. So go for it, man. What was actually the meta? Why did you do this if it wasn't meta? Regale us with the story. You're the victor, so to the victor go the spoils.
Yeah, so it's funny because the meta was both matchups was primarily Gaunt Magbodon. People love Gaunt Magbodons. I mean, it's a good composition. It works. You could win with it. Makes games a little closer. People generally thought Brutes were not as good as Gaunts.
Okay. Before they got a 75% nerf. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, people weren't really getting that upgrade. And people thought Weavers sucked. I feel like until like 2 days ago, people thought Weavers sucked. And if you saw me in the show matches, what 2 units did I make? I made Brutes and Weavers.
Yes. Yes. So what do people get wrong about it, or
Yeah.
was it just an anti-meta build, or what did you?
No, it was good. Yeah, Gaunt Magbodon is a little bit more turtly off 2 base. Get like a decent, strong army, push out, play like normal and like more traditional RTS, slow and steady, and then win the game through outplaying your opponent. Or you could just have a shit ton of stuff, have all the control of the map, super fast, super strong, mass expand, exploded to an insane economy. And people weren't really exploring that route, and I was. So it was funny because I did that strategy. Not many people have used it or seen it unless they played me.
Okay.
But then Reddit is like, see new Stormgate footage. Only mass fiend meme. And all these like mass fiend memes.
Yes.
And then there's like 1,000 comments. Man, fiends are ruining this game. It needs to be nerfed. Man, I can't believe the balance. Bro,
Surprised the Zerg faction is over. That was the one I heard that just tilted me off the face of the earth, because I think the units. So the faction that has movement speed 5 is the highest movement is the Zerg faction. All right, like whatever you say, Reddit. Whatever you say.
So yeah, that was not even popular for weeks. It started to get popular. A couple of people started doing it, but I found like the perfect 30 imp brute timing, as you guys saw in every one of those replays, where I put 10 on each Luminite, pull out a gas, 9 Iron Vaults, if you want to know the secret sauce.
Okay,
and then
there we go.
And then as soon as I had the upgrade, the second I have the upgrade, I would do the split. It would make them go deaf, and I would A move across the map.
Can the opponent hear that? Like, I know when you're hearing it, you could just hear your eardrums like the cacophony of madness. But can they? Okay, so they can also hear it. Nice.
And if they don't have vision, they'll feel it through the lag. It would lag their computer.
Oh, okay.
Because they would all split and play the sound at the same time last phase, so it would lag the whole game.
Yes. The most terrifying thing if you're trying to defend against get damage with. I think the number of people settled on in the Super Cup was 5. Like 5 hedgehogs was the magic number they seem to think, 4 or 5. And so if you're just trying to micro your heart out with 4 or 5 hedgehogs, and you just see the screenshot, it just looks like a disaster movie.
Yeah, I think my opinion, My magic number is probably like 1 or 0.
Oh, for hedgehogs, yeah, yeah. I will say you did make so. This is why I'm curious about that idea that it wasn't meta, because when people watch those Super Cup games, again, previous phase, you can say there's no value if you want. They directly inform the public perception of what now went into the elephant patch notes. So if you want to say that it had no impact, I don't really have more words for that kind of mentality. But hedgehogs are no longer a unit now, so 0-1 is about as many as I see even in my games now. So my question for this is, we were talking about the show matches in the games. What about the maps? I don't want to get into Titan's Causeway because we've only seen like 2 games of it. But Broken Crown, Hinterlands, Jagged Maw, Secluded Grove. Do you feel like there's any maps that are good for Vanguard? I mean, you're on the Infernal side, so you're I'm asking you, I gave you the praise, and now I'm asking you if it goes the other way. Because the perception is that the balance is like still. I mean, if you see the post, I made a tweet about this. It's something like the win rate is 65-35 for Infernals. So people are going to be asking, well, of course the Infernals players are going to say there's any good maps for Vanguard. Come on, you fight strong Vanguard players. What maps are good for them?
I feel like as a competitor who's played a tournament and is about to ban and pick maps, I don't want to spread too much
Okay,
information.
sure,
But
yeah,
for well, everyone's seen Broken Crown Hinterlands, so
yes,
there's no secrets there.
okay,
You guys have seen dogs take over the map, so there's definitely good strats on that map for dogs taking over all the creeps and keeping the Infernals contained. Um, yeah, I don't want to leak too much
sure.
information,
Oh,
but
sure, yeah,
yeah,
okay,
maybe we
yeah.
talk about the matchup in general, the
Sure,
balance.
yeah, let's go for that.
Um,
Right. Pick it
yeah,
to a place that's safer, obviously. Because
yeah,
this is,
because
you are a pro. This is somewhat asking you to, like, now can you shoot yourself in your foot so we can study what bone structure looks like? Like,
yeah,
go on, go at it more roundly then. Like, what units do you think are good? Might be a good way to approach it.
cool, yeah, that's so.
Because that's not even a build, right? That's not telling people to do
Yeah,
a
yeah,
build. Like,
exactly.
what units are good? What units are disfavored? You know, things like this in the current build.
For sure. So I think every Vanguard unit except for the Hedgehog is probably good right now.
Okay.
Um, and the most strong unit is probably the Scout, the dog.
Mm-hmm.
The dog with the bonus to light damage upgrade is extremely oppressive. It costs 25 from the Biokinetic slab, in which usually after you get the Biokinetic slab, you get the dog upgrade, and then you just refund the Biokinetic slab. Like as soon as you get the dog upgrade.
Yes.
Uh, and the dogs essentially force the Infernals to stay in their base at risk of losing all their imps, get some Shroud stuns, and the dogs then take every creep on the map. And Infernals is all of a sudden one base behind with no creep money. And
It's
no
that.
scouting.
Yes. Because they don't have a scout. They don't have a starting unit that just makes magic happen for them.
Right.
Right. And then
And we
scouts
used to be
also
able
have
to,
the Z ability,
yeah,
which is crazy.
yeah. Used to we be able to send a fiend across that would be infested or split, but the dog is faster than the fiend now. So you put, yeah,
Yes.
can't get away. Yeah. So yeah, no scouting, no creep money. Not saying that the matchup's imbalanced, but the dog makes the early game very oppressive. I feel like if you're not a pro player, it would just be way too OP for you to want to play against dogs.
Fair enough. What about so brutes got hit, the brutes got brutalized. They're
Yeah.
half or 2/3 of the unit they used to be. You lost 11% of the damage from the fiend. The Magmadon is only, I think, 75% of its damage, and its charge is worse than it used to be. I'll be honest, it'll be popular to say, like, they're still overpowered. Do you see the 65-35? But what units, like, I think the Gaunt got some love touches. What are some other units you think are good for Infernals right now? Like you said, you've been praising the Weaver, because as of 2 days ago, no one thought that that was good.
Yeah, I feel like people still don't think it's good. I mass weavers and it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I want to say I definitely have one of the I think behind partying I may have the best Infernals versus Vanguard.
Okay.
Um, so it's working for me very well, and a lot of it has to do with Weaver control.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
by the
they're
way,
tanky. They have 900 health.
for anyone who's not getting the subtext here, that means that the dire scenario that TheoRy just postulated about how you don't have creep money, you can actually still win the game from there, or you can get into a late game scenario. So,
Yeah.
if you had to put listen, just cards on the table for balance, because that's what people are we've been talking about for the last little bit. Where would you say Infernals are sitting? Like, do you think they're 45-55 disfavored? Do you think that they're favored? You know, what would you say there?
I'd probably go 50-50 with the top Vanguard players.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
for example, I played Kiwian yesterday. He beat me more times than I beat him. I think he beat me 3-1.
Okay.
But on other days, I've beaten him 3-0 or 3-1. So we split depending on the day. When I see players like that, I feel like the match was balanced. I split games with Lucifron 1-1. I at
He's
the
like
top
22.
level,
He's like 2150 MMR or something right now, right? Like he's doing really well.
it's probably higher than that. I'm guessing.
Yeah. Shout
He's
outs to Stormgate World for actually giving us ranked ladder information early.
yeah. Yeah, he's super good. Yeah, I'm looking at his match history. He's only lost 11 games.
That's kind of crazy. That's pretty good.
That's nuts. So I account for like 9% of his losses or something.
Nice, nice. Did you hear that? That's going to be the quote. I account for 90% of LucifroN's
Or
losses. There we go.
9%.
Oh,
9.
9%. I thought
Yeah,
you
I beat
said
him once.
90%. That
No.
would have been
9.
crazy.
9.
So,
I beat him one time of those 11.
so
The other 10 are Venny probably.
yes. So the course of balance and maps and things like that might be a bit sensitive as we're getting into tournaments. So let's talk about something that's fully theoretical, because if anyone watches my stuff, that's all that I'm interested in, right? Watching stuff and then imagining what could have been different. So there's been talk publicly. I think it has been tagged in the Yeti tracker. There's a Yeti tracker on the public Discord for anyone who doesn't know that finds out when Frost Giant Studios people are saying something. And their conversation was, one of the conversations was, well, you have to understand there aren't tier 3 units in the game, or there's not a full tier 3 in the game. So I'll ask this, right? You play Infernals. What kind of tier 3 unit would you like? This is anything you want, right? It could be, I mean, we have a siege unit now, but you're free to theory craft it. Don't worry. Frost Giant Studios will make it perfect. The balance will be fine. It won't shift anything too drastically. What kind of unit would you want?
I don't know what direction they're going to take.
Sure.
I don't really like sudden death mechanics like Dota has, where I don't know if you know about Dota, but there's tiers of items that unlock throughout the game,
Okay.
and there's 5 tiers, and the final tier opens at 1 hour. The tier 5 neutrals, and they're basically just batshit ridiculous. And it's basically you grab those, you have one more fight, game's over. Like they're insane.
So it's like the bombs in Smash Brothers for anyone who doesn't play Dota 2.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry you've tied. Everyone's at 300%, and there's going to be exploding bombs and
Exactly.
fire on the outside, right? Yes. So you want the game to end as a natural course of things, not just end
Yeah.
because the game developers decided they want it to end. So
Right. So I don't want like a Leviathan coming on the field and just like killing everything.
sure.
I
Probably
whatever
don't like
it is-
Wonders then. You probably don't like Wonders from Age of Empires, that kind of mechanic where it's just leave me alone for a while and I win.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of objective-based RTS winning. I much prefer killing your opponent, because that's what you're trying to do.
Yes.
That's the fundamental purpose of the game is I have an army, you have an army, fight the armies, right? So
If it's too touchy of a subject, you don't have to chime in, but I did hear other RTS people who come from StarCraft. We'll leave it vague. If anyone wants to, they can find the receipts themselves. And they said of something like Company of Heroes, where it is an RTS, and you do play, and there's objectives, and there's things that you capture, and then at a point limit, the game just ends. And they felt that was very unsatisfying because they want to crush their opponent, right? So how about this? Would any support caster work for you for Infernals? Because right now, there's not really a caster for the faction. Maybe it goes against their identity, but this is your Theory Wonderland, right? It's in your name. You get to do it.
yeah, I
Yeah,
do
there
like
we go.
theories.
There we go. We got the name joke.
Yep. Yeah, I think support units would be cool, like you said. I feel like the Infernals kind of have a caster through the Weaver.
Okay.
The Weaver's our closest thing to a caster slash tank right now. Um,
I mean, they have
if there was,
0 armor and they're light, so you've got to think of them more as utility.
yeah, maybe if we had, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking of like Zerg abilities. They would all be way
Sure.
too OP. Like, I feel like if you threw in Neuroparasite, it'd be too OP. If you
Mm.
threw in, we already have Abduct. Any
What about
AoE Cloud
Warcraft?
is OP.
What about
Warcraft.
Warcraft 3? Because I've something I've noticed for StarCraft. People won't like this. I'll say this. If you want to redact, or if you want to fight it, you certainly can. I'd be interested in hearing. So, if the TTK, we see this in FPS games, if the time to kill is too fast, then the only things that matter are damage mitigation and buffs, and it's very hard to make debuffs for the opponent or buffs for yourself other than kill the other person faster. Whereas Warcraft 3 has a plethora of buffs and debuffs and abilities because the time to kill is lower. So maybe, is there anything from Warcraft 3? Maybe something you just like casting that you would put on this hypothetical unit.
Maybe some sort of like linear stun, like Impale. Impale would be cool.
Okay.
Um, so Impale is like a basic a linear stun of spikes. It's units in a line. I feel like it would be pretty good late game utility for like stunning lancers or exos. Some of these like cheaper high density units that we have a hard time with currently.
Okay.
Um, and I think it would be fair if a tier 3 unit is killing like a tier 1.5 or 2 unit. That would be something kind of cool. Um,
Okay.
that's one spell I could think of. Maybe some sort of invisibility thing would be cool too. Like shadow hunters or something that can go harass or kill bases a little bit better. Because right now fiends don't really cut it for harassing bases. They
Yes.
die to bobs.
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because it made me think of air units. Now, something that people have said is, again, the great public discourse. We want stronger air units. These are too weak. And the other side says, you don't want strong air units. That's a big problem. So it looks like from the design of the game, just the way that there's clumping in the circle, like for anyone who knows, you can't mutastack Spriggans, right? Or Hornets. They kind of bounce away from that. So as a final question, as one of the final questions, do you maybe want a new air unit, or do you want anything to change with air? Are you liking the more ground-based style of Stormgate?
Yeah, I don't really like air units in RTS. I I play a lot of Orc in Warcraft 3, and Orc's air in Warcraft 3 isn't exactly super prominent, but I think it's cool that they're very ground based. And right now, both factions seem very heavily ground based in Stormgate. So I kind of hope to see that going into the future, where air are more like support units, like the Sentinel or Medevacs, dropships, Harbingers, or Doombringer. I like units like those, but I don't think I like things like carriers and battle cruisers. As cool as they are, they make the game kind of mundane, kind of like, yeah, you just send capital ships to each other and watch like one person wins. It makes
It's
the game
like
kind of
very
boring.
cool for Nexus Wars, but it's the kind of or something like that. But it's the kind of thing where it ignores all of the terrain of the map, right?
Yeah.
Or it makes the terrain of the map a problem in a way that only one side can fix. Trust me, I come from another game, and we have air unit problems in that game as well. You don't want to have air unit problems, right?
Yeah.
So, with that, I think I'm done, and we're gonna wrap it up here. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to, or any last thoughts you want to have? Do you want to say go cheer for me when you're in the tournament? Like anything you want to say on an ending note?
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to my friends and family who watch my stuff, and then shout out to Aftermath Esports, the team I play for, and they support my Stormgate endeavors. I'm also now a co-owner of it,
Nice.
an investor into it, and Aftermath Esports has big plans for Stormgate. So make sure to check out Aftermath Esports, AME socials on all platforms, I think.
Yep. And for anyone who is watching this, there's a command in the stream, exclamation point theory, where you will link over to your socials. And I
Oh,
imagine that
thank you.
your socials link there through back to everybody else that you're mentioning. So thank you so much,
Cool.
Theory, for your time. I appreciate it. We're going to cut the stream here. And good luck with the ladder. Hope to see you do well in the
Oh,
Stormgate Open.
Thank you so much for having me. Really cool.
Yep.
Yeah, have fun, everybody.
Yep. Bye.